thinking about how to introduce a man that y'all already know. And you know, I didn't know Wayne prior to October of 2006. I registered into a seminar over at Landmark Education called Velocity. I'd been doing stuff at Landmark forever, okay? But when I registered into that seminar, that's when I met Wayne. He registered into that seminar as well. And he had been, you know, and he'll tell you probably something about it. But so, and I didn't know the man, okay? I didn't until I was sitting next to him. I looked down and I saw he had a very funny looking shoe on. I thought, what kind of shoe is that? What is that? And then later I saw him walk and I saw what it took for him to move across the floor. And I thought, you know, this is a really brave man. In fact, I kind of thought of him as a warrior. And the more I got to know him, the more I thought of him as a warrior. So we're both proud. I want to present to you my beloved husband, Wayne Staton, and his stand against eradicating polio on this planet.
I have to make sure I'm far enough back so that my voice makes it to the microphone. No, first, always, thank you. Thank you for having me here and allowing me to speak specifically about ending polio. Perhaps more important to me, the bigger picture. What polio is really about, ending polio is really about, it's making a difference in the world. You know, like you do with Adult Protective Services, with your book. And I'm sure there are lots of things that each of you do in one way or another where you make a difference in the world, where you make the world better for everybody else. So really thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak for something that I'm passionate about. Now usually when I get up, and sometimes during this, you know, when I talk about something that means something to me, and you can pretty much count on me at some point in it to tear up. This is the first time that I've done it. So this is the first time, though, that I've started off with tears. Okay. You know, and really that kind of speaks to the heart. Because what I want to do today is to give you my heart, to give you the things that are important to me. You know, we each have our body. You know, one way of looking at human beings is we could think about. So anyway, so back to speaking of, one of the ways we can look at each other, right, or think of ourselves as a body of concerns. Have you ever really thought about it? We all, you know, part of being human. So human beings as a body of concerns, right? We all have the things that not even worry about. I mean, certainly we have the things we worry about, but we have the things we're just concerned with, the way that we want to see the world be. You know, and making a difference in the world is one of those for me. So as I was thinking about today, and I was thinking about, I've talked to you guys a lot. And so the usual stories I would tell when I address a new audience, you've already heard those stories. And I don't really want to repeat myself inside of that. But I am going to repeat myself a little bit. I have this little video that some of you have seen before. Some of you have not. If you could bring that up. But it's from the Ice Bucket Challenge. Y'all remember that several years ago? Yeah. So with the Ice Bucket Challenge, somebody would pay money if you would have a bucket of ice water poured over you. Well, Eric Luke from y'all's club, Eric was online here, or he was earlier, that he issued the challenge and I took him off on it. We made a little video of it. I hope you enjoy it.
Good morning, Wayne. Hey, Wayne, look at, hi, are you ready? Are you ready for your Facebook challenge? All right, come on.
This is the true measure of me and my commitment to ending polio.
All right, let's see you walk on out there.
Just patient.
So here's Ivan, the engineer of the program. All right.
This is official when you got to stand up or not. Hopefully not. This is I for ending polio. I am accepting the challenge of Eric Liu that he will donate $100 to Rotary International's Polio Plus campaign. And I challenge everyone in District 5890. Oh, and I don't know where this is going to do it. If you got
Easy, Dad. You got to slip on an ice cube.
you're supposed to duck the one. Duck. Oh. I don't know.
And for me, the best part is always being laughing in the background. that I'm going to speak for a while and hopefully out of my story of my life that you'll get some sympathy for me and you'll actually listen. You'll really listen when I talk about the last 5 minutes of it. So the last 5 minutes is where I'm going to urge you to support us in ending polio, but really to support yourself, to become the biggest person you can be, to make the biggest difference. So most of you have heard, and I don't know, I got polio when I was 8 months old. I was born in a small town, outside of a small town in Virginia, Lynchburg, Virginia. I got sick. They took me to the doctor. The doctor said he's got a cold, which is how polio usually shows up for people who show any symptoms. About 1 in 2 people who actually carry the disease, who had the virus, show any symptoms, and of that 1 in 200, another 1 in 200 will show up with any symptoms. Or being paralyzed, if you say that. So I was one of that unlucky few. But on the other side of that, it ended up leaving me with a weak right leg and hip, and that's kind of been the condition of my life and how I lived inside of it. But it could have been a lot worse. Polio is a muscle disease and it could affect your chest. Nick Schrader, I don't know if y'all heard, he sent me a picture the other day, an article about a man up around Dallas. I forget exactly where he is. He's spent 75 years in an iron lung. When your chest muscles don't work, you can't breathe. So that's right on the bad side. And it's given me a bit of a perspective, if you will, on life, right? Because I can look out and I can see I could have had a lot worse life than I've had. I'm also aware, too, of the luckiness of where I happened to be born. That I was born here in the U.S. where we have lots of technology. Good, you already did it. You can see here a picture of me after I got sick, and they decided that I had polio. I went to that doctor. They took me to a different doctor 3 days later after I was paralyzed. He sent me to the Crippled Children's Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. It was about 3 hours away from the house at that time. And you can see there a picture of my mom leaning over me and my cousin kneeling there beside me in a walker with a brace then. I wore a brace all through high school. I took it off when I graduated. After I graduated, when I started college, I took it off. And for almost 40 years, I was able to live, quote, a normal life. I did have special shoes. The other results of it was because of the polio, my left leg was a lot longer. And you can't really see it in this picture here. I'm not sure how prevalent it was then. But over time, by the time I was a teenager, my left leg was 2 inches longer than my right leg. So in addition to the brace, I had a 2-inch sole on the bottom of my right foot. And the brace wasn't fancy like this one is. It had latches on the side. It had rods up both sides rather than just this side or this side. And I had to pull latches up to be able to sit down. And, I walked peg leg all the time. This one's real fancy. Technology has improved and it's real fancy. So when I straighten my leg out, I can put pressure on it and it'll help support me. But yet when I walk, it breaks. It allows me to have a little bit more of a natural gait than walking stiff-legged all the time. I lived most of life in that condition without having to wear a brace or anything. I did wear funny shoes, as Gwen said, that funny shoe she noted. My right foot, right leg shorter, and so my foot is smaller. So I had to have custom-made shoes, and I had to have actually 2 of them. My left foot is real splayed out, and so that was a big old wide one, and my right one was smaller. And that was what she noticed there in those first times that we met. I was a normal kid. I've told you before that I was valedictorian in my high school. I won a full scholarship to the University of Virginia. I majored in physics. I was a leader. I was president, both vice president and president of my student body at school and pretty much any club. I led it in all of the athletic stuff. While I couldn't play sports, I could keep score. And that was the best job in the world. And that's another, I guess, highlight of my life. I look to be efficient in what I do. And keeping score was the best thing in the world for that. I didn't have to go to practice or anything. I didn't have to clean up, as the manager. So the players had the practices, the managers had to clean up and do all sorts of things. All I had to do was show up at the games, keep score for the game, turn my scorebook in the end to the coach, and I was done. I got to ride the bus. I got to be with all the cool guys, the athletes. Little small schools, 88 people in my graduating class. So this is not a big school. I was in a small pond, you might say. No, but on the other side of that, there's always been this inside of me is I have this thought that I can't. All I have to do is look out for people. And everywhere I turn, I can see you do things that you don't even think about. And I can't do those. And Gwen and I, she's with me all the time, and she sees these instances of how I see probably one of the worst is about parking or somewhere where, she just doesn't think about it. But you just don't think about it because there's no concern for you. Your body will take you there. My body, I have to think about it. I have to work out how I'm going to do that. Like last Sunday, a friend of ours took a sailing. So that was a real interesting thing for me. First, to get on the boat, looking for all the places I can handhold, make sure I'm stable, people there with their hands, but having to think about it. Whereas Winnie, she hops up on the back of it, goes 3 steps, and she's in the boat. And getting out of the boat, I had to scoot out of the boat on my body because I did not trust myself to try to do that. That's been my life. On the other side of that, it's always, I've always had, if you will, this hero complex. I've always wanted to be the hero. When I was growing up, I couldn't get out and play, but I read a lot, and particularly comic books before I started reading real books. So I lived in Superman, Green Lantern, Batman, all of the DC comics, and later on the Marvel comics. Two of my favorite ones are Conan the Barbarian. I don't know if y'all ever read those comics or not. And the other was Sergeant Fury's fighting something, whatever. And he was like this soldier in World War II, and later became the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. If you ever watch, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that on TV, they eventually made it those comic books. And these men were big and strong, and I think what really calls to me is the uncomfortable hero. That's the people that I like in life. That's what Rotary is part of that for me. It's not it's not the physicality of it. I could never do the physicality of it. But there are things that I can do. And this is it. I have a mouth. And sometimes even I can be quite articulate in speaking. So, I got 10 minutes. Lots of time. Any questions here? This, I always like for this to be interactive. So if there are any questions here, yeah.
I have a neighbor who recently had a hip transplant about a year now, 2 years ago. Tell us about the impact on your hips long term.
Yeah, well, it's actually probably more my left hip. I didn't talk about it, but when I was 15, I got 2 inches. So they operated on my left leg, took 2 inches of bone out of the femur, made an incision in my hip, drove a hole down through the femur and put a metal wire. And I have a constant fear about the hip wearing out there. As I said, about 40 years I got for a good life, which is, well, not this is bad, but a normal. And then I started noticing myself. That's the other aspect of this, is my body's deteriorating. In that time that Gwen and I have known each other, I've gone from just wearing a funny shoe, no cane, no brace or anything, to wearing regular shoes now, but back to wearing the brace. I pretty much use the cane. You see me standing up here. I even think about sitting down. I mean, it's okay with y'all. I'm going to do that now. But it gets ever harder for me physically to get around. When I first went to TIR and they actually prescribed the brace for me, it was exactly for that reason, because of the stress on my left leg from compensating for the right leg, that they were really worried about that. So that's why I have the brace on. So far, I haven't had any problems with my hip. But I do anticipate, as just as my body and my legs continue to deteriorate, I'll probably end up going to crutches, a walker. And I already have a little cart for electric carts that I ride around in. Maybe a wheelchair, I don't know. We just have to see. Hopefully it won't get that bad, but I'll still be able to get around, particularly inside of the house, with just an assisted walking device. Yeah. So, anyone else? Yeah. You know, and really, like all of us, right? We all should do that, but even more so. At one time, actually, when Gwen and I first met, gosh, I was 207 pounds in. And one of the first, I think, projects that she and I took on together was going on a diet. And I lost, South Beach, right. We did the South Beach diet. I lost 37 pounds and got down to 170. And I've kind of been stuck there. I've gone back up at times. I got back up to 197 and went back down to 170. And the last iteration, I was just 187. I'm back down to 170. And I've actually gotten below 170 a little bit now. So my goal weight, though, is to be at 150. The less weight that I carry, and really all of us. You know, doesn't just apply to me. You know, maybe for other reasons. For me, it's the whole, you know, the physical, mechanical aspects of carrying that much weight around. But really, all of us, we need to pay attention to our weight and our diet and make sure that we eat as best we can to keep us healthy as long as we can. Yes, sir.
If you are worried about your hip, I can give you some good news.
Yes.
I had 3 hip replacements, and the first ones, they were not that advanced here. I had to go for the first 2 months to Germany because they are more advanced there. But now, the last 10 years, in America and here, we have 2 clinics which are excellent. They are up to international standard, and they can fix your hip. Don't worry about it.
Good deal. Good deal. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Comment and question. Prior to my dad having his accident, now being in a wheelchair, there was something you said about, you know, having to plan out how to get around and things like that. Driving his ramp van, it's amazing how differently you kind of see everything. And even, you know, thought, all right, how do we get into a building here? I was just working that.
Yes.
And so and before that, I never really thought too much about it. But then once that happened, you discover you're just kind of plotting it out.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just as it happened. So I understand that and respect that. Secondly, on a more light note, what did you score when you were scoring games? Baseball?
Oh, all the sports. I had more letters. You know, when I talk about that, I actually ended up with more letters than the athletes did because I could keep score for football, basketball, and then in the spring, both baseball and track. And the kids the players couldn't do that. They could only do one. So every spring I got 2 letters, and I lettered 4 years in track and baseball. That was where I got my first letters. Football and basketball the last two years. Yeah.
I've done baseball, but I can only imagine how many of those sports, how confusing it could get.
Yeah. But it was actually fun. Yeah. So, and you know, being smart, I'm down to my 5 minutes now. So being smart, I also led into debate. So the Letterman sweater, they're not so much these days. Mine had 2 letters on it. I was the cool guy. And that was me compensating. me, me trying to be normal, trying to be as good as I could, which in a lot of ways is my hallmark. All my life, I've always striven to be the best human being I could be. Kind of my first foray after I got out of college and, my running around days, and I started reading all these books on self-improvement and everything, and I came across this course called the S training. Have any of y'all ever heard of the S training?
EST.
EST. Yeah, it's good for Edward Seminars training. And I'm going to end up with a quote from the man who founded that. But the catch part for me was S, 60 hours that can transform your life. And I took that with the hope that, well, maybe I'll get enough out of that I could actually make a difference in the world, that I could actually do something in the world. Taking that course led me to being introduced to a man named Buckminster Fuller. And he was an author, an architect, a thinker, an inventor. He wrote a book called Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. And so this concept that the Earth is a spaceship, that it's a closed system. And we have to manage what's inside of this closed system. So, we talk about climate change, and I don't know which way you go, but we got to pay attention to the temperature of the Earth. And how, whether it's natural or whatever it is, we got to pay attention and we got to manage it. We got to have clean air. We got to have clean water, all of those things. And my first foray then into really making a difference was to speak for a program called the Hunger Project. I led what was called a briefing where I educated people about ending hunger with the goal of ending hunger on the planet by the year 2000. I met a wonderful woman who shared that. We got married. We weren't so active for a while, and then she passed away very suddenly on me, and I was left with 3 kids. So I had a 10-year period or so where it was just me and the kids, and then I met Gwenny. The kids were pretty much grown by then, and I met Gwenny, and and I'm just so she's like that she shares with me this passion for making a difference in the world, for having a world that works for all of us. And it's a possibility that I see. We talk about, we think about possibility, but the possibility itself, and this particular possibility that we as human beings, that, acting together, right? That's our vision statement, that we acting together can actually make lasting change, can make a difference in our world. That's really what I'm up here for, and I think this is probably a perfect lead in to me. My final page, if you want. Yes, ma'am.
Gwen, thank you for sharing the story. Appreciate it. I guess I wanted to ask about the relationship with Rotary and Polio. Obviously, we're nationals very involved in projects now that are going on specifically that you'd like to share or update us on.
No, there's nothing. We're in the end push. I would like to emphasize have you got your Rotary magazine for October? And did you see the article in there on ending polio? I don't know if you've had a chance to read that or not, but that's really, really excellent. That I'm sure you guys know the current numbers. There's only been 2 cases so far this year. In the last 9 months, we've now completed 9 months without any new cases. And I've always been worried throughout this time that this is just fallout. This is kind of a false number. But reading that article, it seems not so. That it seems that it's a true number, and we really are this close. They talked about the problem of the vaccine-induced polio, and how that's part of the strategy, and how much easier it is to clean that up than the other. So while there's no particular project, other than the stuff that we're doing here in the district this year, we're out to raise $1 million this year. So be generous if y'all can have, I ask for your support there, raising that money as much as we can. We could continue to fund the effort. On a fun aspect, even if you're not coming to district conference, we're looking to have the world's biggest pie fight. And the record for that so far right now is 1,180. So we need to get 1,181, and that's a lot more Rotarians to show up at a district conference, right? So I'm sure we're going to be appealing to the community and appealing to people who would like to come out and participate in this shot at the Guinness Book of World Records and have the world's biggest firefight for Indian polio. So thank you really for asking us. I probably would have mentioned that. Thank you for asking that. Can you go to the next slide? I'd like to end up, and I'm probably going to go a little bit over. Hopefully you'll forgive me. I'll try to be real quick. Okay, so what time? Oh, okay. I'll probably finish before that. So really what my life has been about is making myself, trying to grow up in a lot of ways. I think. When I look at life, I started off and it's just about me. And as I looked at life, increasingly I could see ever larger spheres, if you will. First it was just me, then me and my wife, then the kids. And then I could think of this as the clubs I belong to, the country, the county, the country, the state. And ultimately, the biggest group I could think of is the world. And trying to be as big as I can for the world. And this particularly speaks to me. This came from a document called Making a Difference, or A Shot Heard Around the World. When I first read that, the beginning of this started off with sometimes around now. The world shifted. And it became, instead of a you or me world, it became a you and me world. We're all so interconnected now that we're all going to make it or none of us are. And I always, for my life, then I've tried to act from there and try to get ever bigger. That's part of me being in Rotary. Rotary was kind of, for me, I was a Rotarian, what even happened. I had those things already there. But I'd like to read this quote and share it with you. We can choose to be audacious enough to take responsibility for the entire human family. We can choose to make our love for the world be what our lives are really about. Each of us now has the opportunity, the privilege to make a difference in creating a world that works for all of us. It will require courage, audacity, and heart. It is much more radical than a revolution. It is the beginning of a transformation in the quality of life on our planet. What we create together is a relationship in which our work can show up as making a difference in Rotary's life, in people's lives. I welcome the unprecedented opportunity for us to work globally on that which concerns us all as human beings. In many ways, that kind of says, you think of Rotary as a set of relationships, right? It's a group of people who are related in this common theme. The next slide. As expressed here in our vision statement. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. And I always like to reverse the order of that. For me, the change starts in ourselves. And it flows out from ourselves, and it flows out to our larger community. And all the things. And Rotary is just a perfect example of the differences that you make in your community. I mean, the scholarships you give, the health care, that you as a group in your community, that you unite together with other people and take action. Out of your uniting together is that you make this really great thing. Just something I came across recently is anybody have any idea how many cells are in the human body? Cells. 1,081. Let's try 72 trillion. But I think about that and think of it. If you think of your body as a community of cells, think about that. You have 72 trillion individual cells. Now, they're not as complicated as we are. They're less complicated.
They don't all get along. They don't all get along.
That's right. I mean, in different systems inside of it, they have that all make it up, but somehow they all come together to allow us to be us. And think about it. What if we could have 7 billion, roughly what, 1/10,000 of that? What if we could have 7 billion human beings who got along with that level, who cooperated at that level? What could we do? What could we do? That's really what I'm urging you today, with the bigger picture that I'm here for today. The small picture, if you will, is in polio. But the big picture is for us to stand for something, but that which is important to us, that which is of concern to us, be it in our individual lives, be it in our community, and be it in our globe, be it in all of us. I have one last quote. And I don't even have a title here yet, but I really like this. If not us, if not you, if not me, then who? Who's going to do it? It's one of the things I always think about it as a way of looking at the world. There is no them. There's only us. You know, that's one of the problems for me, I think, today is we have too many tribes. There are too many thems and us's. You know, we need to look at that bigger picture and see our commonness, our common ground across everywhere, across our religions, across our races, across our politics, across our geography. And look for the place where we're all the same, where we share in common. And if not now, when? I mean, we can always put it off. We often do. So, but now is the time for that. And in this moment, and in every moment, you need to make that choice to choose to act with others and to make a difference in the world. I see we have a question.
One last question about Rotary. Did you join Rotary due to the organization's activity in polio, or was it the other story? I joined Rotary.
How did you come together?
Yeah, well, a friend of mine from Landmark, Gwen and I both participated in there. Well, yes, you pay Landmark. And so throughout the year, I've done many courses through them, looking at various areas in my life. So that particular one, we got accomplishing things. So another friend, Karen Latham, another Rotarian, she invited me to go to lunch. And at the lunch, she said, they said, here, you polio. I've heard that, but I didn't know it was Rotary. We talked about it tonight in Rotary. We really need to do that, because I didn't know it was Rotary was doing it. And that pretty much, I mean, she said that Rotary is doing that, I found my niche. I found my area that I could act, in particular for any polio, but also in this bigger picture, that I didn't talk about it, but there's a thing called the Ruritan Club, which is similar to Rotary, but it's at a smaller, it's only community, it's stationwide, not worldwide. And I was a member of the Ruritan Club, and so we did things in our community there. We had a Christmas party, we built a real big ball field home, and my time is up here. I'll talk as long as you like. But what was the other club? Ruritan, Ruritan. So I guess to finish, just to thank you all for allowing me to come and run my mouth for a while to speak to you, and hopefully to make a difference, hopefully to inspire you to take charge of your life, to make a choice in your life to make a difference.
We would just say thank you to you as well, especially for taking care of the land.
Wayne, thank you for your time and being such an inspiration. You and Gwen both are a power couple in District 5890, and thank you for all you do. We're that close to eradicating polio, and I would encourage everybody to reach down in your pockets and give just a little bit more so we can get rid of this dread disease.